Toto Wolff has offered new insight into the mysterious engine problems affecting George Russell, including a new issue in Belgium. Wolff described how Russell was affected at Spa alone, and then revealed how all 8 Mercedes HPP-powered cars were impacted during the race.
He used the word numb, and that single word tells you exactly how bad things have gotten for George Russell right now. Not angry, not devastated, numb. That's the word a driver reaches for when disappointment has visited him so many times that his own brain has stopped registering it as pain. And when the man saying it is a Formula One driver fighting for a world championship, that's not a small admission. That's a red flag flashing right in front of Toto Wolff and the rest of the Mercedes garage. Let's rewind to what actually happened, because the numbness didn't come from nowhere. At the Belgian Grand Prix, Russell's race ended before it had barely begun. Lap 1 lost source hairpin, and he was already tangled up with former teammate Lewis Hamilton, spinning off into the gravel while the rest of the field carried on without him. On the surface, it looked like a straightforward first-lap racing incident, the kind that happens in this sport more often than fans would like. But underneath that surface was a story far more frustrating for Russell, one that didn't fully come out until an untelevised radio message revealed just how much had gone wrong before contact was even made. According to Russell himself, the trouble started right out of the very first corner. His battery simply refused to recharge. He came out of that opening turn down 35% on power, a number that in Formula One terms is enormous, especially on a circuit like Spa where straight-line speed down places like the Kemmel Straight can make or break your entire race. And because the battery wasn't charging properly, it created a secondary issue too. The turbo never sorted itself out, leaving him with essentially no power to fight back with. By the time he reached the top of Eau Rouge, one of the most demanding and high-speed sections on the entire calendar, his battery had dropped all the way to 0% at one of the most dangerous parts of the track, with cars bearing down on him from every direction. Russell didn't mince words about how serious that situation actually was. He described getting swamped by 3 cars at once, cars that had no business being anywhere near him if his own machinery had been working the way it should, and that's really the heart of his frustration. It wasn't the contact with Hamilton itself that seemed to bother him most. It was the fact that he never should have been in that vulnerable position in the first place. A driver with a fully functioning car doesn't get swallowed up by 3 rivals through one of the fastest, most technical corners in Formula One. He does when he's got nothing left in the tank at the exact moment he needs it most. Both Russell and Hamilton were fairly measured about the actual collision afterward, both willing to call it a racing incident rather than pointing fingers directly at each other. Still, the stewards disagreed enough to hand Hamilton a 5-second penalty for his part in it. But as we've seen before in this sport, a penalty on paper rarely fixes what's lost on track. Russell was out of the race, and the damage to his championship hopes was already done regardless of what number got attached to Hamilton's result sheet. The numbers tell their own brutal story here. Russell now sits 50 points behind his own teammate, teenage sensation Kimi Antonelli, at the top of the Drivers' Championship standings. 50 points is not a gap you close with one strong weekend. That's the kind of deficit that requires a sustained run of near-perfect results paired with a significant slice of misfortune on the other side of the garage. And when you're the more experienced driver watching a rookie teammate pull steadily further away in the same machinery, that gap starts to feel less like bad luck and more like a wound that keeps reopening. Which brings us back to that word, numb. When Russell sat down with reporters after the race and was asked directly about how he was processing everything, he didn't reach for anger or devastation. He said he's simply numb to the disappointment at this point, explaining that when setbacks happen often enough, you eventually just get used to them. Think about what that actually means for a top-tier athlete competing at the absolute peak of his sport. This isn't a driver who's given up. It's a driver whose emotional defenses have had to adapt just to keep functioning after one gut punch too many. That comment didn't go unnoticed inside Mercedes either. When Toto Wolff was asked directly about Russell's numbness, his answer revealed just how carefully the team principal has to walk a very fine line right now. On one hand, Wolff made it clear he genuinely understands the emotional toll these situations take. He acknowledged that a driver is naturally going to feel intensely emotional when something like Spa happens to them, and there was real empathy in how he framed that part of his response. But then came the other side of that coin, and it's worth sitting with exactly how Wolff phrased it. He reminded everyone, Russell included, that a Formula One driver is part of an incredibly elite group of people on the planet. He called it an honor to drive for Mercedes. And he didn't stop there. He pointed out that sometimes it's the driver who lets the team down in these moments, not just misfortune or mechanical gremlins. But he was quick to add that it's not only on the driver either, it's on the team as a whole. Either way, he made clear exactly what's at stake beyond just Russell's personal championship campaign. Every one of these lost results also costs Mercedes valuable constructor points in their ongoing fight against Ferrari. That fight against Ferrari isn't some abstract background detail either. Ferrari had a genuinely strong weekend at Spa themselves, coming away with a second and fourth place finish, Charles Leclerc leading the way ahead of Hamilton. That result chipped away at Mercedes' championship cushion, cutting their constructors' lead down to 73 points. Still a healthy gap, but every lost opportunity like Russell's first lap exit makes that fight tighter than it needs to be, and Wolff clearly wants that message understood inside his own garage. So there's the tension right there, laid bare in Wolff's own words. Empathy for the emotional weight Russell is carrying, balanced against a pointed reminder that this is an elite privilege and that personal disappointment can't be allowed to overshadow what the team is fighting for collectively. It's not a cold response exactly, but it's not purely comforting either. It's the kind of measured, dual-sided answer you'd expect from a team principal trying to manage both a struggling driver psychology and a championship battle that's far from finished. To his credit, Wolff didn't leave it there without at least extending an olive branch. He said outright that he hopes the numb feeling goes away for Russell and that the team is going to try to help recreate some sense of optimism and positivity around him. That's not nothing. For a driver who's just admitted publicly that he's become desensitized to disappointment, hearing your own team principal acknowledge the need to rebuild that mental and emotional foundation matters. Whether Mercedes can actually deliver on that promise in a way that translates to results is a different question entirely. And that question gets tested almost immediately because there's no long gap for Russell to sit with any of this. The Hungarian Grand Prix is next on the calendar, and it carries extra weight as the final round before the summer break. That timing adds its own layer of pressure. Go into the break on the back of a strong recovery drive, and Russell has something to build on over the coming weeks. Go into the break still numb, still 50 points adrift, still searching for answers about a battery and turbo failure that nearly put him in serious danger at one of the fastest corners in the sport, and that's a very different mental state to be carrying into an extended break from competition. What makes this whole situation so layered is that it's not really one clean story. It's a driver dealing with a legitimate, serious mechanical failure that put him in a genuinely dangerous position through Eau Rouge. It's a championship gap that's ballooned to 50 points against his own teammate. It's a team principal offering both sympathy and a pointed reminder about privilege and responsibility in the same breath. And it's a constructors' championship fight against a resurgent Ferrari squad that can't afford many more races like Spa if Mercedes want to keep that gap comfortable. For Russell personally, though, it really does come back to that one word he chose: numb. Not a word you associate with a driver who's simply had a bad weekend. It's a word that suggests something has been building for a while now, race after race, setback after setback, until the disappointment stopped landing the way it used to. Wolff clearly recognizes the danger in that mindset, which is exactly why he's talking about rebuilding optimism rather than just moving on to the next race weekend and hoping things sort themselves out. Whether that rebuild starts in Hungary remains to be seen. But One thing is clear heading into this final race before the summer break. George Russell isn't just racing for points anymore. He's racing to feel something again.